Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 17th of March, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I put out a tweet today, very basic tweet, where I just said, yeah, I'm thinking it's ETH season again. Now, there are so many reasons why I'm thinking it's ETH season again, and you'll notice I said ETH and not Ethereum, but I guess like ETH and Ethereum, pretty much going together here, but like, I think without giving investment advice, without saying you guys should go and buy, put all your money into ETH right now or anything like that, I don't know. I feel like ETH has fared very, very well price-wise, given all the macro uncertainty currently going on. I mean, we just had the Fed do a rate hike, right? Which was priced in ages ago. I mean, we knew about this for a long time, right? There was the war with Ukraine, which definitely wasn't priced in, but it didn't really do much to the ETH price. I mean, we had a bit of a dump there, but then we kind of recovered. And I mean, at time of recording, we're at what? Almost 2,800? It's like 2,770. And the ETH BTC ratio is going up as well. We had the Evergrande stuff, and we still have a lot of the weakness in the stock market, weakness in the Chinese stock market as well. And yeah, I mean, just the macro backdrop is not the most bullish thing in the world. Runaway inflation, all that sort of stuff. It's not the most bullish thing in the world. But crypto is holding on. ETH is holding on. And we could be above 3K any day now again. So, just kind of like taking all this into context, it's actually quite amazing that ETH is still where it is. And I think there's a bunch of reasons for this. Obviously, the merge is a big one. That's coming up very, very soon. We have more and more people becoming aware of the layer 2 ecosystem, how Ethereum is going to scale. I think Ethereum does very, very well during the periods of time where there isn't just like tons of new people flooding in. It's more of the existing people kind of, finding their home within Ethereum and within the communities within Ethereum, rather than kind of like going off to these things that are just pumping for whatever reason and these scams and stuff like that. So I think it's, it's a whole mix of things that's keeping kind of like Ethereum up there. And that's why I said, I think it's ETH season. Now, I do want to go through each of those points as well. I think the merge, I've spoken about a lot, but I think there are so many things people still don't realize about the merge. I mean, I gave this answer in the Daily Gwei Discord today. Someone asked me, does the ETH merge create a halving-like effect or greater than in proportion to the effect the halving has on BTC as a scarce commodity? And I gave 4 points just off the top of my head about why I think that the merge... the merger's kind of like effect on ETH as an asset and ETH's issuance is much greater than a Bitcoin halvening. And the first reason was that it's a triple halvening, right? It is 3 halvenings in once. It's 80 to 90% reduction, depending on how much ETH is staked at the time of the merge. It eliminates sell pressure from miners, right? Because obviously we're going to proof of stake, and stakers don't need to sell nearly as much as miners to cover their costs. It bumps the staking APY due to fee revenue going to stakers, which means that more people are going to stake ETH. This will happen because of the fee revenue and also the MEV as well. We could see 10+% on vanilla staked ETH, and then you have like all the other kind of like yield burgers that are being created around ETH. Obviously, I mentioned the ETH Maxi the other day, stuff that Rocket Pool is doing, all these sorts of things. And then the fourth thing that is less talked about, but Refuel kind of like watchers and listeners will know about this. There is a dead zone of around 6 months where no new ETH issuance will be coming onto the market. Nothing, guys. Like, it's literally going to be 0 new issuance coming onto the market. New ETH is still being issued, but it's just you can't withdraw it because withdrawals aren't coming until at least 6 months after the merge in the Shanghai upgrade. But essentially, what's going to happen is you have that dead zone where, it's essentially going to be negative because we're still going to be burning ETH. Yes, okay, right now we're not burning as much as we used to be because the gas prices are much lower than they used to be, but we're still burning ETH. I checked it today, and we're about 15,000 ETH away from burning 2 million ETH since August of last year, which is a massive achievement in my eyes. And I think, obviously as the market heats up again, gas prices will definitely go back up again there. But those are just 4 of the things off the top of my head. There's so many other things that I've discussed in the past about why the merge is going to lead to, I believe, a really positive narrative around Ethereum, really positive kind of like on-flow value effect for ETH as an asset, and just an all-round kind of like good thing there. Now, I think I saw a tweet today actually that I've got here from Alexander Fisher about the validator kind of queue right now for the Beacon chain. So there is, well, at the time of Alex's tweet, which is around 12 hours ago now, there was 300,000 ETH waiting to activate, which means 300,000 ETH waiting to get into staking. And obviously, as you guys know, there's a validator queue, so only a certain number of validators, I think it's around 900 per day, can actually enter staking. So 900 times 32 ETH gets you I think 28,000 ETH or something like that worth of validators they're allowed to worth of ETH that's allowed to enter the beacon chain each day, and then it's kind of like the queue that gets really long there. So this queue, off the top of my head, is going to take over 10 days to clear, and I think the reason why so many people are staking their ETH is because they're finally realizing, I guess, like those yields are going to spike and they want to get in now. And I remember saying this to you months ago to all of you guys. If you wanted to stake your ETH, if you had 32 ETH minimum, you wanted to stake on your own, you needed to get in months ago to avoid the queue, because the queue was 0 for a long time. But now it's hitting back up again. It seems that a lot of people are staking their ETH again. Obviously, we have Rocket Pool, which is adding to that now. We have all these kind of, like, as I mentioned, the yield burgers that are happening around that, encouraging people to stake their ETH. And people are just getting more and more confident in the merge happening very, very soon as well. So I think, as I said, taking all of this into account is quite amazing. And I have another tweet here where I looked back at a post that I wrote in January of 2019 titled "Why ETH is Valuable." And ETH's price was $100 back then, guys. It just come off like the massive bear market in 2018, down 94%. Saying that ETH was valuable and that it will continue to increase in value in January of 2019 was the most unpopular thing to do in this space. Like, I don't remember getting too much pushback on my piece because my Twitter presence wasn't that big back then. But I mean, the Bitcoin has dominated it back then because Bitcoin had fared better than ETH during the downturn. It didn't go down as much, all this sort of stuff, and everyone suddenly became a Bitcoin maximalist. But being bullish on ETH at that period of time was incredibly difficult, and very much not the popular thing to do. But I shared an excerpt from that piece today where I basically said, this massive issue introduction coming to ETH with the merge is not news. I wrote about it in this piece over 3 years ago. But just because now we're kind of like heating up, more people are hearing about it, more people are paying attention to it, they finally realize that this is coming. And this is why I keep saying the merge is not priced in, guys. Like, how can it be priced in if over 3 years ago I was talking about this sort of stuff and only just now people are cluing into it? Yes, to be fair, ETH has gone up a lot since over 3 years ago, but I think that, a lot of that is also due to the general kind of like bull market trend that we saw. Obviously, other things with ETH such as DeFi, EIP1559, all that sort of stuff, which I actually wrote about a potential burn for ETH in this piece too. So, like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, guys, but, like, come on. Like, all this sort of stuff is available for a very long time. And as I said yesterday, or I think the day before, most people are 6+ months behind this industry at any given time, if not much longer than that. I mean, the people who are just now figuring out, if they've been in crypto for the last, 4 years or something like that, and they're just now kind of like figuring out that ETH is having this massive issue introduction, then that's on them. That's their failure, because that information has been public for a very, very long time. It's been public for longer than I published this post, because I published this post and I shared a little table of what the issuance is going to be like post-merge. So, taking all that into account, guys, when it comes to Ethereum, I never believe anything is priced in. I mean, I was just talking to my cousin today, actually. We went and saw a movie, and he was kind of like talking about how I showed him a couple of weeks ago all the stuff happening in the layer 2 space. He's much more interested in the NFT stuff. He spends a lot of time with that. But he was asking me about layer 2s, and he's like, dude, like, how do I learn about layer 2s? So I'm like, okay, well, here, go to l2beat.com, scroll, go click through and click to all the resources and just like immerse yourself in all the L2 stuff. And obviously, it's a lot to immerse yourself in, but this is kind of pretty much like the fastest path to get there. He went to the website, he went through a few of it, and then he came back to me and he's like, what the hell, dude? I had no idea all of this was going on. And this is someone who spends a lot of time in this industry, but he spends a lot of time in NFTs rather than the layer 2 space. And to be honest, like, I don't spend much time in NFT, so it would probably be the same thing for me. If I was like, hey, can you show me what's going on in the NFT space? And I probably would be unaware of most of the things. So I just truly don't believe that 99% of the stuff within Ethereum is ever priced in. I don't think it's going to be priced in for a very, very long time. And that's, I guess, one of the major reasons why I'm still so bullish on ETH after so long. I'm still buying ETH at this price. I mean, my first ETH buy was at $10, guys. I bought most of my ETH around, $100, $200 during the bear market. And I'm still buying today, even though I'm up, obviously, a lot on my existing ETH. And I don't really ever plan to sell my ETH. I'm staking it, and I'm earning rewards. And obviously, I can't access those yet, but I'm still earning more ETH as rewards. And because I can't just look at all of this sort of stuff. I can't espouse and talk about what I'm talking about without kind of having skin in the game. It won't work. Like, I get massive FOMO. The funny thing is, even though I'm buying ETH every day, I still get FOMO when the ETH price starts going up. Because I'm like, oh my God, no, stay low for a bit longer so I can buy in some more. And I know a lot of people feel that way, but I mean, come on, when you take all this as a holistic view and you look at this and you kind of like see everything that's coming for Ethereum, for ETH as an asset, and you see how many people just don't understand all of this sort of stuff, it's very, very hard not to be bullish. And I know I've gone on about ETH as an asset a lot lately in the merge and all that sort of stuff, but I really do think it's incredibly relevant. I really do think it needs to stay top of mind for you guys, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. I do have a couple of other merge things I want to talk about, but I'm going to leave it at that there for you guys today. Hopefully you're bullish enough after that. As I said, it's not investment advice. I'm not going to go tell you to buy ETH at this price and sell ETH at that price or do anything like that. I have no idea how to do that. I mean, I've never done that, but I'm just trying to get kind of like my point across as best I can to keep you guys as kind of like close to the way I'm thinking about this as possible so that you can make more informed decisions for yourself at the end of the day. All right, speaking of the merge stuff that I wanted to talk about, Terrence from the PryLabs team shared a article here going over the bug that Prysm had during the Kiln merge testnet. So you can see here, it's a bit of a technical bug. You can kind of like read through it. It's only a short read, but it basically shows like why there was a bug in the Prysm client here. It's great to see that a post-mortem came out so quickly, right? And there's kind of like a root cause, resolution, all this sort of stuff, and detection, and all that stuff. Obviously, this is the stuff that we want to find in the test nets. I said yesterday or the day before that I don't believe this would require another testnet to be spun up, but I could be wrong here. There could be one more testnet that gets spun up, but I don't know. I haven't gotten that kind of like feeling from anyone at this point. I haven't seen anyone kind of like talk about another testnet that needs to happen or anything like that. And as far as I know, since kind of like this bug, the Kiln testnet has been running perfectly fine. I mean, for the last couple of days, it doesn't seem that there's any kind of hiccups there. So very, very cool to see that. Seems the merge is coming along very, very nicely. And just a kind of like another tweet here from Jasek, who works on the Nimbus ETH2 client or consensus layer client. They've actually been able to cut memory usage down by another 250 megabytes. So now running a validating node using Nimbus only takes up 750 megabytes of memory, of RAM, right? Now, the reason why I wanted to highlight this is because this may be boring to a lot of people, but this is very in line with what Ethereum is trying to do. So Ethereum, I guess, like, the reason why Ethereum proof of stake has taken so long is because we wanted to figure out a way to allow anyone to run a validator on kind of like cheap hardware. Yes, obviously running a validator requires 32 ETH, and back in the day, 32 ETH was worth a lot less than it is today, especially when a lot of these decisions were being made. It was worth $3,000-$4,000 back then. Obviously, it's worth a lot more today. But keeping these things like very, very, resource insensitive, not resource intensive, is very, very important. And also because some of this stuff also affects the beacon node, which you don't need 32 ETH to run. And that's actually one thing I want to state here as well. There's a really bad narrative going around at the moment that I've realized around the merge, on top of the other two bad narratives that I've spoken about before. But this one's got to do with people believing that you need to have 32 ETH in order to run a fully validating node post-merge. No, guys, you can run a fully validating node known as the beacon node and the execution layer node without any ETH. All you need is the hardware. You don't need any ETH at all. I don't know where this narrative came from, just like I don't know where the other narratives came from. Probably some kind of like YouTubers who don't care to do their research. But I just wanted to kind of like get that out there. But as I said, improvements like this are improvements for the whole network as a whole, making it easier to run on kind of low-cost hardware is definitely what we want to see. And in the future, once kind of like the merge is done, there's going to be ways for people to basically pool their ETH, but have validators on their own machines. That's really cool. And that's another thing I should talk about another time. But what it basically allows you to do is that you can have a validator running on your kind of like PC without having the 32 ETH required to do that, right? You kind of like pull it together and do all that. You can already kind of like do it with Rocket Pool, but I'm talking in like a fully self-sovereign way sort of thing. We kind of like without the I guess like outside of Rocket Pool, but like it's a bit of a different implementation as well. But anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about that today. I got a bunch of other things to get through, but cool to see that resource. That Nimbus is less of a resource hog than it was before. All right, so Polynya pointed out something in, I guess, like one of StarkNet's or Starkware's correspondence about StarkNet, where they say, I know I'm late to ask, but is there more information about this? And this being performance improvements coming to StarkNet Alpha v0.9.0, which is expected in the first half of April, which one of the performance improvements is parallelizing the sequencer's execution of transactions. Now, as Polynya explains here, if this means what I think, I wasn't expecting this till 2023. I mean, disbelief that the programmable ZKR, that a programmable ZKR, zero knowledge rollup, with parallel transaction execution is a mere few days away. Don't be me. Don't underestimate StarkNet. Now, why is this a big deal? Why is parallel transaction execution a big deal? Well, this is something that Ethereum does not have. The EVM does not have this. The EVM cannot do this. It cannot process transactions in parallel. This is something that actually Solana does have. This is the one, maybe one of the only innovations that Solana has done that I actually consider to be an innovation, that I actually consider to be pretty cool. And now this is coming to StarkNet, because obviously StarkNet is not EVM compatible, is not built on the EVM. And they're kind of like building this from scratch. Now, that's not to say that these EVM compatible L2s can't introduce parallelization. I'm pretty sure it's on their roadmap, but I believe it's a bit harder to do. They have to kind of like play with a bit more things there. But yeah, I mean, as Polynya says, don't underestimate StarkNet, guys. I mean, I know that they're taking long. I mean, they're not even taking that long to roll out, but I know that they're not at the stage yet where some of the other L2s are, the generalized L2s are. But that's because they really are building something from scratch here. And I think if they can execute this like they say they're going to be able to execute this, it's going to be massive. It's just being able to process transactions in parallel. I mean, I wish I could give like a quick example here, but I just nothing's coming to mind right now. I've gone blank on that. But essentially, being able to process transactions in parallel leads to such a speed up of kind of like transaction processing. It's insane. And then you add on all the speed up that we get from just like Zcars in general and all that sort of stuff, and then hardware acceleration comes into it. My God, guys, like the layer 2 space is just continues to amaze me, continues to make me so incredibly bullish on the Ethereum ecosystem, and continues to impress me with how, hard and smart working these teams are. Because at the end of the day, this stuff is hard, guys. Like, this isn't easy stuff. This is bleeding edge cryptography, bleeding edge kind of like blockchain design, because at the end of the day, layer 2s are basically blockchain just without the consensus part. And the fact that it's coming all so quickly, much quicker than even the top minds in this space thought, is really awesome. So I just wanted to kind of like point that out there. Yeah, I think that if Starkware can pull this off with StarkNet, it's going to be a very big deal for everyone, not just, I guess, like the researchers and developers, but obviously the users as well. All right, so speaking of layer 2, ZK Sync shared a kind of like a new newsletter on Substack today called page1.substack.com, and this is a post that they did basically titled The Zero Knowledge Landscape, which is an overview of the current zero knowledge scaling ecosystem. So if you want to know, I guess, everything there is to know about the current zero knowledge ecosystem inside and potentially outside of Ethereum, you can go to this post, and it has a bunch of links to so many different things. Guys, you could spend a very long time going down this rabbit hole here. There's a bunch of news, there's a bunch of kind of like, who are the current players, what are they building, what are they doing, links to all that sort of stuff here. Just wanted to kind of like highlight this. And I think, Page 1 is a newsletter that does just general crypto recap. So if you wanted to, I guess, like subscribe to this to get kind of like information each week here, you can do so. But this one I thought was really cool, the zero knowledge landscape, because it kind of like brings all these resources into one place and allows you to easily kind of like, dive deep into the zero knowledge stuff without having to go around and find it for yourself. So definitely check this out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, so Suhail here on Twitter announced something today that just kind of came out of nowhere called OurTube, which is YouTube but decentralized. So as Suhail says here, OurTube is an open source Web3 video sharing application built on top of the Polygon blockchain using, and these are all the kind of like I guess this is the stack that they're using, and there's also a demo. So as I said, this is live today, right now. So I believe it's live. I'm not sure. I think there's just kind of like a demo here showing kind of like obviously a YouTube-like video player, but built on the Polygon kind of blockchain here, using Infura IPFS to kind of like store data and things like that. And it is open source, of course, and you can go to the GitHub and check out all the code and everything. But this is cool. I think the less talked about aspect of this industry is things like decentralized social media, decentralized kind of like websites, all that sort of stuff. And that's always I believe that's always been because it's been much harder to create these things. They've suffered especially from scaling issues. I think that decentralizing them is also quite difficult. We've seen a few attempts at this. I mean, I think the most famous attempt at a decentralized social media platform was Steam, which actually ended up getting taken over, through a hostile takeover by Justin Sun, and then they kind of like forked off into Steam and Hive. And I think they've still got an active community on Hive there. But
Steam, I think, had on-chain governance. So Justin Sun was able to essentially amass enough of the tokens in order to vote, himself as basically a dictator there, and then kind of the community forked off, which is a really cool feature of blockchains, by the way. The fact that we have the right to exit via fork, and we can kind of band together and fork and kind of like go do something else, instead of kind of like staying on the chain that has just been taken over through a hostile takeover. But yeah, I often wonder like how you would do governance on things like this. You guys know I'm a pretty big bear on-chain governance, especially for things that, I'm not necessarily a bear on on-chain governance for DeFi apps, but definitely for layer 1 blockchains. And obviously this OurTube thing isn't a layer 1 blockchain, but I don't even know if it makes sense to have governance for something like OurTube. I think Aave has it right with what they're building with Lens Protocol, where what you want to do is you want to build a bunch of primitives. You want to build the protocol, the smart contracts, and then you want everyone else to build their own front ends on top of that. And you want to keep those smart contracts and primitives as solid and as immutable as possible. And I think that's what Uniswap got right, where Uniswap has always been governance minimized, has always been, I guess, like something that essentially allows just everyone to build upon, compose with, interoperate with, and all that sort of stuff. And that's why they've been so successful. At least one of the reasons why they've been so successful, of course. And I think that's why I was really bullish on Aave's attempts at decentralized social media with Lens Protocol, which is in its early stages. But the fact that they're just building kind of like things like APIs and, the smart contracts, the primitives, instead of basically saying, hey, we're building decentralized social media, but you have to use our front end and everyone can change things on the front end by going through governance. I don't know, guys. And I feel like the back end for something like this doesn't really need to change that often. I mean, there are certain core things you would have to have, obviously, for a decentralized YouTube. But the front end, I mean, you could edit that, and that could be totally centralized as long as you have a bunch of front ends that people can use. And then worst comes to worst, if there's no front end that you can use, you can literally interact with the contracts directly if you have value locked in them. Let's say there's kind of like a wallet that exists alongside, or a kind of like I guess like a vault that exists alongside something like this, and you want to interact with it to get your money out or something like that. I think, that way you could just do it directly through the chain. So there's always kind of an opportunity to do that. But yeah, cool to see this. I'll link this in the YouTube description, and you can go check it out on GitHub. All right, so speaking of Aave, big announcement from them today. Aave v3 is now live across 6 different networks, I believe. And from what I could see, I don't think they deployed this to Ethereum mainnet. I think that they've just deployed it to Polygon, Phantom, Avalanche, Arbitrum, Optimism, and Harmony. Yes, that's right. Ethereum mainnet deployment will be determined by the community based on the maturity of the currently deployed markets. This is cool. This is really cool, especially the L2 stuff, because obviously, with Ethereum mainnet, it's pretty much inaccessible even at these gas prices to most people. And as I said before, I'm really bullish on layer 2 native protocols. But why not layer 2 native protocols that are different, like different versions of the protocol? So Aave v3 not being on the Ethereum mainnet, at least not yet, and launching natively on layer 2s and I guess the other EVM compatible chains is a different way of doing things. And I was actually pretty surprised by that. I thought it was very, very cool. But outside of that, V3 brings with it a bunch of really awesome features. I think their portal feature, which facilitates the cross-chain, cross-L2 transactions, is pretty interesting. They've got high efficiency mode, which unlocks higher borrowing power. Isolation mode for allowing new assets to be listed while protecting the protocol. This, I think, takes inspiration from Euler protocol, which I've spoken about before. Gas optimizations across the board, so gas costs for all functions reduced by 20 to 25%, and more. Specific features for L2 networks, community stuff, risk management. I mean, there's so much packed in this Aave v3 release. And as I said, when they launched on testnet a few weeks ago, I was expecting mainnet very, very soon. Well, here it is. Not that it's on Ethereum mainnet, it's on the kind of like, I guess, mainnet of these other chains, but I'm sure a lot of you are already on there right now. And as I said, Aave was one of the key missing pieces to the Optimism and Arbitrum networks, and now it's on there, and obviously on Polygon POS chain as well. So very, very cool to see that. Definitely go check this out if you haven't already. Obviously, I'll link it in the YouTube description, and that's it there. Very cool to see this live. All right, so finally here we have another update from Alchemix. They've introduced something called gALCX, which is a new wrapped version of the gALCX token designed for cross-chain and layer 2. When you wrap gALCX for gALCX, we stake, being the protocol stake, and auto-compound your gALCX. This saves you claiming rewards and restaking manually. So a very gas-efficient way to do this. And then you can transfer gALCX across, different chains and different L2s. And I think this is a really great way to do things like this. Because obviously, I mean, okay, so there's two ways to do these bridges, two main ways to do kind of like bridging of assets. One of them is just to lock it in a smart contract on the parent chain and issue it as an IOU on the bridge 2 chain. And the other way, which Maker has talked about recently, is to essentially burn the kind of like token on the chain that it's being bridged from, and so that it only exists on the one that it's bridged to. So there's no IOU, it's the actual kind of real token. And then obviously, I guess like this is a third way of doing it, just kind of like wrapping these tokens together and being able to, I guess, kind of do stuff in the background for holders of the token as well, while preserving cross-chain and cross-L2 stuff. So very, very cool. These are the innovations that I like to see, guys. I mean, I wrote about this in the Daily Gwei newsletter today, but I basically said that I don't think there was very many DeFi innovations in the kind of like DeFi 2.0 thing. I think most of DeFi 2.0 was Ponzi's and money games, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it wasn't really innovative for DeFi. It wasn't really adding, value on financial transactions, and I wouldn't even call it DeFi. I mean, as I said, they're money games and Ponzi's and things like that. A lot of them ended up collapsing. RIP Frog Nation, am I right? But, when I kind of like look at the innovation that actually happens within DeFi, it's stuff like this. It's the cross-chain stuff. It's the L2 specific designs. It's what Aave is doing. It's things like protocol-owned liquidity, which is actually part of the DeFi 2.0 stuff. But I think protocol-owned liquidity is a really, really cool innovation of DeFi more generally. But yeah, much more cooler than just kind of like creating these Ponzi's that auto-compound and kind of like require new money to come in order to keep going up and then rebase and all that sort of stuff. Look, call them whatever you want, guys. Money games, Ponzi's, whatever. As I said, I don't necessarily think they're bad, but don't lie to yourselves about what they are. Don't say that this is the future of finance. This is going to be, how everyone kind of like does their financial activity. This is going to be the new standard money. Don't just lie to yourselves like that. Be honest with yourselves with what this stuff is. I think it's much better for the space. It's much better for you personally, and it's also much better from an investing standpoint too. If you lie to yourself about what something is, I think you're much more likely to lose money on it as an investor, because you're essentially saying, well, you're essentially saying this is something that it isn't, and you're making a bet on something as if you believe that it's something that it's not. And then when reality comes and hits you and basically says, well, no, I'm actually this, not what you believe I am, then you stand to lose money. And I think this is what happened with a lot of the Frog Nation projects, especially the Wonderland project. People were like, this is going to keep going up forever. This is awesome. We're all going to make money. We're all going to make it, blah, blah. And then it came crashing down really, really hard. It's down like 95+% of its all-time high. And that's the reality settling in. So if you don't want to lose 95% of your money, or maybe, anywhere from like 50 to 95% of your money, probably best to take these things into consideration and think more deeply about them. But yeah, I think on that note, last piece of advice there from me on kind of like what to do in these sorts of situations. But I'm going to keep an eye on more of the kind of like actual innovations within DeFi and let you guys know about them as well. But I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.